chance I missed somebody the other way then.
Yeah.
Normally.
I'm actually on to Trinity quite a bit recently. The students are fascinated with this story, and they want mentors and, you know, keys to the steps to success, but not just money, you know, what's a word they use? Fulfillment. They want to make a difference. It's fascinating. And it's across the board. Physics, arts, geology, botany. Botany ones were on the other day. It's fascinating. And I like it. I like the openness.
Yeah. Well, suddenly physics and all those things have become a little bit more where you can almost have a purpose-driven payday if you want, or whatever you want. You can do more nowadays with these things, and you don't need to just fit into a little silo. You know, there's a lot more opportunities, I think. It's
almost become pop culture-y physics.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't go that far. We were typically called the nerds back then, so.
I know, but I think you've evolved into the coolies. Let's see who else. There's a Mark and a Pat coming on. Is the group made up of English and Irish mainly?
I would say the majority, Susan, would be from the UK.
Okay.
Yeah, to be. Yeah, no, definitely. There's a few. We have a few paddies in here thrown in the mix.
Yes, yourself included.
Yeah,
I don't know what's a female paddy.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, Patricia.
I think she'd object to that
one. Or a Colleen.
Oh dear. You know, I'd say the Irish are probably one of the most popular groups here in the United States, and Biden is dragging out every Irishness he's got.
Oh my God, yeah, he's unreal.
And so, well, I don't blame him. I mean, he may as well get 42 million on his side here. There's 42 million Irish Americans. Oh, there's a man with my favorite name, Arthur.
Sorry, I didn't realize that I was off mute there. Apologies. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Arthur. I love your name, not just because of the king, but I had a brother, Arthur. And really? It's a name you don't hear all that much, especially not here in America.
Well, I love your accent, Susan. A lot of my family are Irish, so it's good to hear.
Well, that's great to hear it. You know, I've lived in America for 40 years.
It's still a good accent. I can hear it very strong.
I know it's probably a bit of a mix because I live part of the time in Belize in Central America.
Right.
And they speak Creole, which is like a jive. You know, they dance when they speak almost. It's cool. Really cool.
Very nice.
Right, guys, as you've probably already gathered, we have got a very, very special session for you today. I've got a very special guest speaker who I'm going to introduce you to in a moment. And in case you haven't already got the feeling, this is going to be a very, very high energy session. I've never had so many questions sent to me in advance. I've got a page and a half of questions that have already been sent in ahead of the session. So we're going to do about 20, 25 minutes. Susan's going to tell us the story of Belize and the experience and journey that she's had achieving some world record breaking and life-changing things for herself, other people, and whole countries. And specifically how she's, those of you that have read the bio, read some of the articles that we've posted, read some of the information we've posted in advance, will understand that a lot of and a lot of Susan's successes have been up against the odds. So in environments or positions where the odds were stacked against her, even experiences where the big boys, competitors, people decades and scale above where she was operating were telling her not to do what she was doing and not to ruin her reputation and not to embarrass herself. But she rolled her sleeves up, went out and got it, and proved everybody else wrong. So it's going to be an absolute game-changing session. I want to say a thank you to Garrett, who actually introduced me to Susan, and Susan's actual description of the introduction that Garrett provided was Garrett feels that Susan and I both have something, and he can't really put his finger on it, and I can't put my finger on it, but we have this thing where we have a unwavering self-confidence and self-belief, and even when the odds are stacked against us, we can go out and with confidence and drive actually put these things into practice. Susan's a lot further studied and experienced than I am in this, and she's going to give you as much value over the next 45 minutes as she can about how she goes about what she does, how she puts that into practice, and we're going to start that off with a story as to what that's enabled her to achieve. As far as a formal introduction goes, so Susan Morrice is the co-founder and chairperson of Belize Natural Energy. So BNE, you would have seen it in the articles, and they literally have the most incredible story to tell. We're going to start off with that today, success against all the odds. They've gone on to win achieve every award under the book, the Green Award, the Global Award, Get Energy Award. They beat 43 other, not people or businesses, but countries in achieving that. And consistently, BNE, which Susan co-founded and is now the chairperson of, continues to be the largest contributor of revenue to the Belize country. Susan personally is a geologist by trade, and she has personally won the Outstanding Explorer Award, the Presidential Award for Exemplary Service by the American Association of Petroleum Geologists. And we're going to kick off today with introducing Susan. And Susan, would you mind kicking off by giving us the story of Belize, how you came to approach it, and what that experience was like? I've given the audience a little bit of a snippet, but I think they want to hear the meat on the bones if we could. I might have to, let me just unmute you. I muted everybody when we started.
There, I unmuted myself.
Got you.
Okay, and thanks for the introduction. I've got a lot to live up to there, but it's actually been an amazing journey. And people often say, you know, from Belfast to Belize, you know, it's sort of unlikely. And I was born in Belfast. And, you know, funnily enough, I think it may have been an advantage because, you know, the Catholic and the Protestant were going at each other. And my parents, my mum was from a more Catholic background, my dad from more Scottish Presbyterian type. And so they made a decision not to actually put us into the formal church, you know, one or the other, but we got all the great stories by going to Sunday school and guides and brownies. And I think that was a good decision because it allowed that spirit that we're all born with to not be closed into a particular box, because a box in Belfast quite often meant you ended up in a box under the ground, if you know what I mean.
I was going to say, did that not put you in the firing line sitting on the fence?
No, well, firstly, we were young and we were able to see and be part of the, in a way, the humor. And it can sometimes be difficult. Like, for instance, when I would go into Belfast to do the shopping with my wee friends, instead of going up to the girl soldiers and you put your arms out and you know, they feel you, we would go up to the boy soldiers and they would go all red and we would go all red. And so I think it kept my wits about me, my humor about me, and I didn't get put into either religious box. And so I kept trusting that essence of spirit within me. And then I would play on the rocks when I went on picnics with family picnics, way up in the Giant's Causeway, which is a famous, I'm sure you all know it.
Giant's Causeway is amazing. I've been there. Yeah. I don't have no idea how that even came about. It looks phenomenal.
Yeah, it's like a big giant volcano that spews out the volcanic material and dries. And that's one of the perfections of Mother Nature, because it dries in terribly uniform perfection.
Yeah, like hexagons.
Yeah, exactly, hexagons. Yeah. And actually, if you look at mud cracks, they're a very similar formation. So nature's got a perfection pattern going on, which is not irrelevant to what we're talking about. Anyway, I went to Trinity to study geology, and another happening happened. I failed my first year funny enough, I just was telling the students this, and my dad said, look, stop this silliness, come home and get married. And that was a mindset. And I went, Dad, I love this. And so luckily enough, the geology person, so I'd never done any physics, by the way. I know there's Hugh the physicist on here. I'd never done physics, chemistry, biology. So I used to write stories about in my first year, because I had to do that for first year at Trinity. And anyway, to cut a long story short, I failed. And my tutor, a guy called Chris Stillman, geologist, said to my dad, I think she's going to make a good geologist. Maybe she's not so good at the other things. But anyway, Dad looked at me and he said, if you can do it alone, you can do it. And so I had to really go in and say, how much do I want this? And so
How
I
old
got
do
a
you think you
job.
were then?
I was 19. And,
Right.
I said to myself, well, I can be a waitress. I can make this happen. I went to Captain America's and became a part-time waitress and repeated my year and got it. But the lesson there was for a parent, and we're all either involved in children or being a child ourselves, and that was a key move on behalf of my dad, because he made me look in and say, I really want this, and what's it going to take? And I think that kept my spirit going, because I've thought about this in preparation for you all, actually, because we're in a way trying to pull out the gems of how an entrepreneur, actually we're all born with it, but how do you keep it alive, keep it going, grow it, nurture it, and go for it?
Yeah, and
and
how
so
do
I
you
think,
look after it? That's the key thing. Is a few of the questions which I'll ask you later is we have these fleeting moments of inspiration and self-belief and things like that, but how do you manage it? How do we look after it? Over to you to tell the story.
Yeah, no, but you further stress the fact that point was a key one. The next one, studied geology, got my geology degree, loved it because it was very experiential. My favorite thing was field trips. You're climbing up a cliff trying to figure out how to go back in time. So you're a time traveler, and kids find that fascinating. When I get to the Belize part, I had to travel back 100 million years and become an oil molecule and decide where I'd go. It's cool. So it's going for the coolness in your life, if you know what I mean. The happiness, the adventure spirit is there, which is all that spirit. And so at the end in Trinity, there was an American company hiring, and I'd already been to America as a sort of I suppose in a way it was a challenge to drive and see how big it was. 3 of us went. We rented a car in New York and drove to LA to see how big America was, and we found out how big it was. But I then got a sense of what Americans were like. And so when I went for this job, and got it, which was shocking, because I wasn't the best in the class. I wasn't the big PhD or anybody like that. But I got the job, and I realized that I understood Americans to be entrepreneurs. The stories of Rockefeller, Carnegie, Ford, Edison were all around at the time. And I did my research and looked up what's America really like. And so I decided I'd better become not an American, actually, interesting enough, an entrepreneur, because when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So while I was in Belfast waiting for the visas, etc., I was working at the Ulster Museum on rocks, but sort of researching what are entrepreneurs. So when I got to Denver, Colorado, I'd made up my mind that I was going to become one of these things. And I hadn't realized that making up your mind and your mindset is critical, because I didn't have the vocabulary then. But I was acting on, let's just say, impulses and what I would now understand as nudges from the big boss. I was going with what we might all call a gut feel. And within 3 years of graduating, I had set up S. Morrice and Associates. mainly because I couldn't think of another name and I thought the associates might come in. So I didn't even sweat the name. But one of the opportunities that came up when I had formed my own company was quite an eccentric Englishman, for everybody English on the call here. He is called Sir Ian Rankin, and I'm afraid he just passed away about 2 months ago. And he was a real a mental explorer. He had a very famous brother who was one of Rankin. Well, there's Rankin the author, and then there's Rankin who was head of distillers. But Sir Ian Rankin was a cool guy, and he went to on his holidays and phoned me, and he said, "Susan, is there any oil down here?" I said, "Well, where are you?" And he said, "I'm in British Honduras, but by golly, I think they've just changed their name." And I said, "Well, what to?" He said, "To Belize. They've just gone independent." And so I said, "I'll nip into the library and see." And that's when you actually become a time traveler. And again, life was nudging me in this direction, because it's called an open file report, where geologists have been in an area maybe for years and written a lot of notes, but it hasn't been published yet. And the human librarian, it wasn't just a computer. In those days, they had real humans there, which is far more useful, actually. She dug out this open file report, and I was able to go back and see. Oh, sorry, that's my dog.
No worries.
I was able to go back and see what it was like, what the basins were like at the lower Cretaceous time, which is about 110 million years ago. Excuse me, I'm going to have to put the doggies out. Excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem at all. They think it's funny that somebody rings up and says, is there oil here in Belize? So I don't know, I'll just pop down the library and have a look. Nobody's previously found any, but if it's there, I'll find it.
I think you can almost give this talk, because that's sort of what I thought. I thought, darn it, it's part of the greater Mexican basin. And when you reconstruct the plates, Cuba was right there, docked next to Belize about 50 million years ago. And Cuba had little oil fields, but nobody knew about it because of the embargoes. But I was able to dig in and find a bit. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I went to Belize to join Sir Ian Rankin. And this is something that happened, which was, I think, also one of the keys. I, of course, loved the geology and the history of the earth, but I fell in love with the people. And the people were so open, so just that life's force that we're talking about, that spirit, came right through their eyes. You really, saw what you got what you saw. And I think that created an extra purpose in doing this. It wasn't actually about oil.
And did they know anything about your intentions? Obviously, you looked at them and there was that desire, or you felt like you wanted to add some value and take them on a journey. Were they aware of your intentions at that time? Was there any sort of weight coming in from the audience of, they're hedging their bets on you finding something, or had they seen so many people do it and fail in the past, they didn't even bat an eyelid?
I think those who got to know me when I was a wee young geologist, walking through the jungles, could see and feel the, what would I say, the honesty, that I'd honestly really felt there was oil there, and I honestly loved them.
Did you go there, think just to confirm how the thought process played out, when you landed there and you'd done your research, did you go there initially think like you knew then that there was, or was it a punt? Did you know, when you say you knew it was there, did you know it was there?
I actually knew it was there.
You did?
Yes, I knew it was there.
And just to unless you're going to frame it for everyone else, that you weren't the first person to go there, were you?
No, that's the key. There were 50 dry holes, and everybody, including the Belizean people, said there's no oil in Belize. And
those 50 holes, who were, just to frame how significant this is, they weren't locals with a shovel. Like, who else had been there drilling?
No, it was the big boys. Mobil, Exxon, ConocoPhillips, Anschutz, Shell. All the big boys had been in to Belize and declared that there was no oil in Belize.
And you
And
still believe there was?
I actually, I gotta say, looking back, I don't even think I heard them. I actually don't. When I'm telling the story, I realize, you know, because they've since come back and said, you know, I was your biggest naysayer, but, you know, this is brilliant. And the president of Shell took it. He's retired. Well, he actually had just died about 2 years ago now. But his name was Marlon Downey, and he was a wonderful old man. But he took me under his wing and said, Susan, for heaven's sake, stop talking about Belize. You're ruining your reputation. You know, you gotta come back into America where there is oil, basically. Now, I think I know the mechanism now, and that's what I want to get to, because I think stories like this, you've all got parts of these stories. You know what I mean? And yes, we discovered the oil, which I want to get to, but what we discovered was something much, much more, which is that mechanism, Dan, that you alluded to, that connected us, that immediately got us on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
That mechanism is there for everybody, but it has only been random. You know, Gandhi getting the Brits out of India, but not knowing the mechanism of his vision to be able to pass it on and therefore make a big difference. Nelson Mandela, that movie, if you haven't seen it, Invictus, is great, where it shows his clear vision to end apartheid. But it's because there wasn't a, let's say, a known educational system, something that could be, and to the scientists here and business people, replicated. So what I at the early days, I wasn't even thinking this way. It was actually, where did it actually come? Two key things happened. Firstly, I met Mike Usher, a Belizean, and Mike and I became like soulmate partners. So, and it was great to have him on that wavelength. But, you know, his mom used to say, you know, you're the black sheep of the family, and the whole family were black. So it was a funny metaphor, but, you know, would you go and get a real job? And because they called him a dreamer, because he and I would dream about the oil, and we knew it together that it was there. Now,
did you feel like you were dreamers though? When people look at entrepreneurs and they think they're like the crazy scientist, did you sit there thinking we are dreamers and our heads are in the clouds, or did you just, it was reality to you?
No, it was reality. We just got on with it. We were called dreamers, but we didn't hear that bit either. You know, so this is in retrospect to try and look at these steps. Mike and I were getting on with it. Now, we tried for 15 years, and we had passion, we had belief, we even had energy, personal energy, but we couldn't bring the oil up. Now, as life would have it, I was going back and forwards to Belize. I was actually drilling in Ireland as well at the time, and other places. But I had an idea, and it was called the International Pavilion. And it still is very, very successful. It basically was the first time that all the oil and gas ministers from around the world, there were about 210 countries, were invited to come and exhibit their oil and gas potential at the first AAPG convention. And I sort of visualized the whole thing and put together the committee. And so a professor came to me afterwards and said, Susan, could you come and teach what you did? You know, not only did you have the idea, but you shared it with 100 volunteers, and it happened, and it's been going on for the last 25 years. And that was one of the awards, the Distinguished Service Award. And I said, I couldn't understand his question. I said, you just roll up your sleeves and do it. So I was useless to the professor. I didn't know why one person goes for it and the other person is held back. And I started to think, you know, if I want to make a difference in the world, I better find out how in the world we work. You know, what's making, you know, a Nelson Mandela go for it like that? At the same time, that same Shell president used to say, quote, a guy called Wallace Pratt, who was one of the founders of the American Association of Petroleum Geologists. And he used to say, oil is found in the minds of men. And I used to go, what about the ladies? But that was a humor. I actually realized he was giving us all a major nudge to understand our mind. And that's what made me look at what is this thing we use our mind every second of every day. And yet I know all about the earth. Well, maybe not all, but and we're never taught, where there's no education that actually allows us to understand the mechanism of our mind, to be able to operate for the absolute best outcome at the highest level of our full mind. Now, so I went on a bit of a journey of research for about 4 years, and it took me not only around the globe, from India to California, and where I thought, you know, I could get some learnings, and back through time, as far back as Socrates, know thyself. And I looked at the history and I thought, well, what has mankind been doing? We don't seem to have got to grips with our true nature, our true self. And your title, Dan, I loved your title, alludes to the necessity of that, the importance of that first step, which is to look at and understand the mechanism of your own mind. And from that, realize what we're all about, not just as humans, but as the life force itself. So eventually in 2002, it was about 18 years ago, I found a course, because I'd had requirements. Being a scientist and a businesswoman, I wanted it to be proven track record, the people walk the talk, and I wanted it to be short and fast because I'm practical, and I found the only course that had all of those things, and it was called Educo, EDUCO, and it's from the Latin word, which is the core of education, to draw out from within, or to lead out from within. And for the Irish on board now, I'm sorry about this next thing. When I found out it was an Irishman, I was shocked, because his name's Dr. Tony Quinn. And I thought it might be an Indian or a Californian. I had my mindset. And Dr. Tony Quinn, he had actually left Ireland and was working, I think, from the Bahamas at the time. And I thought, well, this was, and I think I had an inkling that my own mind was going, how could that be? However, I decided, as it was only 2 weeks, I decided this is something I definitely have to do, because I've been researching it for a while. And I went in January 2002 and to the Educo seminar. And 3 days in, I knew I'd absolutely hit the jackpot and much more. I sort of wanted to understand the workings of the mind and why somebody was successful and not, but to actually understand the difference between your conscious mind and your unconscious, and the fact that we're only working from 5% of our mind, and allowing this, our unconscious, to be imprinted. A great way to remember what your mind is like is a picture of an iceberg. The iceberg has about 5% above the water and about 95% below the water. And being from Belfast, that conjures up in my head all the time, because the Titanic hit the bit below the water. But to think that we as as humanity had been limiting ourselves across the board. Now that you got the exceptional ones, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, various people who were onto pieces of it. Like Rockefeller is famous for saying, when he was asked in a book called Think and Grow Rich, what do you think is the secret to your success? He said that I can totally focus exclusively for 5 minutes. And he was onto something, because when you go into a deep, deep focus and attention, we actually, quite often, many people listening will know the zone, in sports people, in the flow. And that's what it's a deep access into basically like your universal energy. And
one of my friends owns, when you recommended a Aduco to me, one of my friends owns an Aduco gym. Is it the same thing? Because that's all about the holistic mind, body. Is it the same thing?
It absolutely is.
Oh, right, yeah.
In fact, that's I won't say a secret weapon, but it's a facet that people don't realize how important the lineup is of your mind, your body, and your spirit.
Yeah.
And Dan, thank you for that reminder, because, for instance, in the core of B&E, and let me just take a step back, because I want to add a bit of what you said, the credibility to this. We drilled a well in Belize after we came back from the seminar. We drilled that well in Belize, and I named it the Mike Usher #1, because Mike had suddenly died. He was young, in his early 50s. And I thought to myself, I'm more determined to go on. Luckily enough, we had, and this is relevant, of course, to everybody, none of the oil companies would believe me. Normally, you would go and get partners, and you'd all come into a high-risk well together. Probably not unlike some of the development projects. Nobody would come in. In fact, there was one company that literally shooed me out of the door into their car park. But we went back to Ireland, and 76 little Irish investors came on board with us. They didn't know where Belize was. They thought a wildcat was a jaguar. A wildcat is a high-risk oil well. And they came on board because of what they knew. We had studied the Aduco model. They knew that was at the core. They knew we totally visualized for the good of the whole country, the country rejoicing, and this well coming in. They didn't even know that the odds in the international oil business, where you had to drill 15 wells to hit an oil well, we only raised enough money for a well and a half. I mean, let's just say anyone in their supposed right mind wouldn't have even wouldn't have started it. So this merry band of Irish people, generally, there were some English and some Americans, but about 76. Mike had died, the main Belizean, and we started to drill. And on the 24th of June, 2005, on the very first well, we hit not only the first oil, but the best oil in the world. So light, 40-degree gravity oil. It goes into the generators without refining. It was totally amazing. And the Shell president phoned, and he couldn't believe it. He said, how did you do this? And I said, wait till you hear this next thing, because he had met Mike Usher. I said, you knew Mike died. And Mike died the year before, on the exact date, the 24th of June, 2004. And in 1 year, on the exact anniversary, against all statistical odds, we hit the first oil in Belize. And we drilled the Mike Usher #1, Mike Usher #2, Mike Usher #3, Mike Usher #4, all discoveries.
That's
And
literally making my hair stand on end. Like the property entrepreneurs, I share stories like this with them, and they just don't, until you've experienced, or hopefully those who are hearing it, like there's so much, you can't even put words to, there's obviously the logic, and you're going to share some insight, but these things don't just happen, do they?
No, I do really, a couple of key words. it was so important that we all, the group of us, let's just say probably about 80 in all, had the goal in mind, the vision clearly, absolutely printed in our unconscious. Because remember, on the Adugo seminar, we learned about the conscious 5% and the imprinting of the unconscious. And instead of it happening willy-nilly on the television or, you know, with your great aunt, take it and understand it and do the clear imprinting yourself. Sort of take your hands and take that control of your life. And when you start doing that, you realize you're actually in a partnership with what I would call the big boss, because that is the essence, the spark, the piece of life's force within you. And that, when you go into what Tony has coined unconscious attention, where you're lining up your conscious and your unconscious, and that opens the doorway to that spirit and flow of, it's greater than passion. It is certainty.
With what do you think we'll go into sort of like managing it and looking after it and promoting it and like in due course, but what do you call that? Because like when you said, like, you and I, we understand it, we get it, we've experienced it. Like when you're speaking, it's so nice to have somebody else on the call that's saying the same things that I say, like, and it's not just like the law of attraction or the power of the universe. It's this whole feeling of drawing things into your life, good and bad. Like, you know, if you think about good things, focus on good things, it all comes together. You've talked about the spirit, you've talked about nudges, you've talked about the big boss. Like, I talk about success and failure are very predictable, and I get the impression you'd probably agree with me. How do you describe that to someone when you say, well, this is what it is, this thing, what is it?
What came to me when you were speaking was, it is the partnership of all partnerships that we're accessing, and it's our birthright. We are co-creators. And that alignment allows you to access that energy once you know. But there's more than that. And that is that Dr. Tony Quinn has actually spent his entire life in almost isolation for humanity, if you know what I mean, to keep himself so clear that he can clear. Because we all come, you've heard the expression, you come to the negotiation table with a different set of experiences and mindsets. We are all carrying different amounts of baggage. And most people, because there is no education in this, don't know how to set them down. They don't realize that they're looking at life through a series of filters.
But you're right. Would I be right in saying that you can spot people who are from a million miles away? Do you ever listen to people or look at people and they're having challenges and they're experiencing blocks, but you can just from talking to them, you know why? You think the chances of you in that mindset and that energy of achieving anything is very slim. And you may or may not be able to explain what it is, but it's visible.
It's visible, it's auditory, it's kinesthetic. You can see sometimes they can't look up very well because
you can feel it. They don't even need to speak. You can feel the energy sometimes.
Exactly.
You just think
that's exactly right. And we have lost, due to our education a lot, and due to the fact that our parents, the society, doesn't realize what they're doing by imprinting doubt and fear. And so therefore, when, you know, let's just say a high risk step is needed, fear will dominate and hold majority of people back. Most people are held back by their own doubts. That's the first firing line. The second firing line, and I'm sure I probably, before I went on the seminar, I believed it was there. But Mike and I tried for 15 years, all the normal ways, the oil business, shooting seismic and doing things like that. So Mike and I probably had not only seeds of some doubt, but also in the raising of the awareness and the money, the group that came with us had all done the seminar because they could see and they backed our mindsets.
To make sure we have enough time for questions, because I literally do have so many questions, and I'm sure the people who are live, we've got another 100 or so tuning in on Facebook, so I've got that feed open here as well.
Yeah. What do you think we should do?
So people, probably a couple of minutes, if you could, on real, either applicable or tangible. Those who are sitting there thinking, I sound like that negative person, or I sound like that, I am that disbeliever. I understand the academics of it, but in reality, I just don't back myself. I don't feel positive. I do keep coming across challenges. What sort of few key things would you recommend to those people to learn how to do this and to apply it in practice? And also those who do it, how can they manage it and promote it and have it more consistently? And then in about 5 minutes or so, we'll go to questions.
Okay, just very quickly to answer your question. A key understanding is to be able to relax and allow the chatter to drop away. Now, you can do that through a specific relaxation that allows that to happen. And I'll make available, Dan, and I'm sure Garrett and you know, the Aduco Gym will do this too. There are a series of Aduco resources which you can all experience. There is nothing like going on the seminar, because Tony has a gift to be able to clear one's unconscious. And you can prepare, because nobody knows when the next seminar is going to be because of COVID. But there are great steps that we can prepare people for that, which is really the fast track, because it's only 10 days. And it's like, whoa. But I'd say that that alignment is critical. There's another critical thing. And funnily enough, when I got your title, I added a piece to it. Back yourself big time. Dare to dream big. And that's because there's no room for fear. You know, if you are absolutely encompassing, trying to make a difference in a whole country, which is what Mike and I were doing, we didn't even realize this was a mechanism, a brilliant mechanism. But we were so filled with that vision, that desire, that knowing, that certainty, that there was absolutely no room for doubt. Even when I had to have security all around this house, we had 2 major hostile takeover attempts, which are like stuff. Someday a movie will be made of this. They were nasty. They were Russian, and actually one was British. In fact, it was a chap called Lord Ashcroft, and I think he would probably be delighted that he didn't being talked about. But they tried to take over the company by nasty means, by dirty tactics, by running down the reputation, trying to run us into bankruptcy, by scaring us, scare tactics. So, but none of it worked. Not even through court.
On that thinking big and unwavering self-belief, what happens? So I've had similar experiences. Like a lot of people look at the developments and things like that we do, and sometimes I'll do my assessment, I'll do my research, and I'll go all guns blazing. And sometimes there isn't a plan B or C, but I just have this unwavering belief that it will be fine, it will come good. What do you do when you put yourself in that position, you make the call, and then you've got your reputation on the line? You've got people saying, you know, you've got the guy at Shell winging you up saying, Susan, you're just going to embarrass yourself here. Like, what do you do when all those thoughts come into your head and you think, and you wake up? I remember walking down the canal end of last year, thinking, if this goes wrong, how bad could this go? And my brain went down a little thing. I ended up sitting on this bridge, like watching the water, thinking, this could end really, really badly, thinking about this big development I was doing.
Yeah.
When those things come to mind, how do you process through them?
Well, a quick answer there is ask yourself what's the worst thing that can happen, and if you can stand it, do it. Now,
do you still feel like that now? Do you still play big now?
God, the world! Like this morning, I had. You see, what's so important, Dan, is that everybody can avail of their birthright. Because people don't even know it's been covered up. I mean, I'm sure this is resonating with people, but it's not in our educational system. So I feel a responsibility not to help everybody discover oil, because they don't want to. They want to discover the oil and energy within. They want to understand that capacity. They want to be all they can be, because they remember it somewhere back in their childhood when they knew they could climb that tree, and they were fine if they fell out of it. You know what I mean? You can look. I look at my granddaughter, and she is full of the joys of spring and courage and everything. Then it gets tempered, diluted, and sometimes almost squashed out by depression. The light is depressed, and that is the word for depression. So the understanding the mechanism, and that's what Haduko did for me, to understand it so clearly that when a torpedo, I'll tell you one of the torpedoes that came, my daughter, 18 years old, took me around the side of the house and said, "Mum, I'm pregnant and the boy wants nothing to do with me." And I could feel these Northern Ireland conservative torpedoes heading towards me, you know. And I, luckily, thank God for the seminar, I knew that's not me. That's something from the past. And I sort of just closed my eyes, grabbed Hannah, and we were together in that moment that we knew together Jace would, we didn't know her name at the time, would come. And so many people make the wrong decision because they don't know that imprinting, that they don't see the torpedo. You see what I mean?
Let me pull two bits out of that, because there's two amazing nuggets in there for those who haven't clocked it. The first one, I'll come back to because it's a question. The second one is when you're in that moment and you're faced with a torpedo, and your response is to open your arms, throw your arms around her and grab it. That's a really key point, because when you have this unwavering self-belief, you realize that the belief is in the journey and the challenge and the adventure. It's not in things going wrong. And in fact, when you're with your team and the people that you're sharing the journey with, sometimes when the proverbial hits the fan, it's actually one of the most embracing moments, because it allows you to get together and drive through it. It's not just that it goes right and we find oil. It's how many times do we have to roll up our sleeves? How many times do we have to tell people who don't believe in us that we're going to achieve this stuff? And it is that journey. Obviously, hitting oil and changing the lives of countries is phenomenal, but it is that unwavering journey that goes through. It's not always the good bits, it's the bad bits as well.
There's one other word to add to your list, which is leaping out of me right now, Dan, and that is to be totally present. It's not just the journey, which eventually, but to be so present in that moment with my daughter Hannah that I could actually see the tiny bubbles of sort of scared happiness coming up. I could feel her love, and I could see her worry, and being so present. I believe you're in the presence, and that's why that moment and those and that is our life's gift.
And I think it's feeling.
Not just,
it's feeling. It's just the word feeling. If you can go and put yourself in a white box with no windows for 8 hours a day for the next 40 years working for somebody else and feel nothing apart from existing. If you throw yourself onto, you ride the rocket, you take on a challenge, you're going to feel everything: adrenaline, success, excitement. And that is the thing about playing big. It's not always that you don't always win, and you do sometimes lose, but you feel it. You enjoy the journey. Just before we go into some questions, the other bit I wanted to pull out, which is a question, is you were talking basically about conditioning a minute ago, and society conditions us to be less, to conform, to get a job, get married, pay off the mortgage, retire and be quiet. Some of us decide, you know what, I'm going to go and trailblaze, I'm going to go and tear down trees, I'm going to make something happen in whatever capacity, small or big. Just before we go into the Q&A, what would your tips be to those who are sitting there and have been conditioned and feel like they should be reserved rather than powerful? What would your advice be to break that code to either them or to their children who are having similar experiences?
Well, I'd say, firstly, they're on this Zoom for a reason. There's no coincidences. This is it, guys. This is the little bit of a shake. And by the way, COVID's doing it too. people have time to go in and go, what's life about? What am I really doing? I don't really want to go back to that job, you know. And so this realization moment, and I actually do believe there's a sort of an energy, a physical energy that is heightening right now. And it's maybe part of the silver lining in this pandemic, but more and more people are coming to the fore asking me these questions, and they want to connect with themselves first, and that's absolutely critical. And by the way, there's one question I didn't answer for you. The Aduko gym, and it's not like any other gym. It is #1 mental. And Gareth is here, and it's through he at the Aduko gym and Jackie, who trains both of us, actually, I believe, that we're able to feel this feeling of total focus. And yesterday I lifted 360 pounds with my legs, and I'm 68. I mean, people are going, what? Even my daughter is 26. It allowed you to realize the importance of full attention and your fully engaged power. So the Aduko gym is one of those resources, and we can do it virtually now, by the way. I do it virtually. I beam into County Clare 3 times a week and do it that way, and take advantage of the lock-in and get with understanding your mind, because you are not born to be afraid. You're not born to doubt yourself. You actually are born to really live with happiness, joy, adventure, bliss. That's absolutely true.
The comments that are coming in right through Zoom and Facebook, everyone is absolutely buzzing off this and getting a lot of value. The energy, you and I spoke quite late in the day in the UK when we spoke previously. And normally by the end of the day, I'm like, I'm done. I left there literally buzzing, skipping through the office, high-fiving strangers on the way home. So the whole experience of this is amazing. Guys, if you've got some questions, drop them in the question box. I've got the ones you've already sent over. Susan, do you mind if I rattle through some questions, please?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love you to.
Cool. What does the word success mean to you?
Oh, it's holistic. It's not just money. It is having fun, being fulfilled, that old-fashioned word, feeling fulfilled, having like that peace of mind, and seeing joy in everybody around me. And ideally, this is success with a capital of S, the whole world knowing and living from this understanding. Their birthright.
Nice. Yeah, that'll resonate with a lot of us. When you've taken on calculated, this is quite a long one. You've taken on calculated risks, which have yielded huge results, which can only really come from having confidence, courage, and mentally, courage and mentally strong.
I could even stop you now, because it's not really about confidence. Because confidence is a man-made thing that you sort of, somebody has to hold on to their confidence. This is actually, you don't struggle. It is the partnership where you are literally in the flow of life. You got to try it, you know. And Dan, I know you are, and you know, want to share this with everybody too, because I do think it's everybody's birthright to know this mechanism. And some of us have been, let's say, lucky enough with parents or positions or whatever to have more of this available to resonate, and some less. But I got to tell you, sometimes the person in the most difficult position of maybe even depression, because they've nowhere else to go, they grab on and run with this. Because it's their saving grace, literally.
Yeah, makes sense.
I don't know if that was the answer to the question, but it's,
well,
it's
to be honest, yeah, that's all good. Yeah, I need to go back to that question because I'm not sure if I've misread it, but here's an easy one. Or what daily rituals or disciplines, we call them our handful of habits, things for well-being, to make sure we are, we say the world's conspiring against us with sugar and multicolored food and, battered everything. What daily ritual, and we talk about handful of habits to be in the best place, what daily rituals or disciplines do you follow that have made you who you are and that keep you on track? And also, what bad ones do you have when you know you're slipping off course?
Well, firstly, I think what we're talking about, and probably most people understand this word, the matrix. The matrix is our thoughts have solidified into these systems, which are not us, but we think they are. The educational system, the political system. Now, if you think politics, it's actually dividing the nation. And it's so important that not only do we unify ourselves, our mind, body, spirit, our conscious, our unconscious mind, but we are unified of one mind. And many of us would see it, in a simple way, like if you've got 5 investors and you can all see the goal, well, then you're all rowing the same way. This is it big time, and understanding the mechanism. That's why I would say I was onto a number of these things, but it wasn't until I fully understood the mechanism that I've been able to share it with everybody, my whole company, all 200 people, and now the whole country, another 200. The chief of police went to the seminar from Belize, and he came to me and said, I want to understand this criminal mind to prevent it. And he came back, and within the first year, he reduced crime by 52% in the capital city. Yeah, entrepreneurs are springing up, and a young one who was 16 has.
Is there any daily practices in there that are encouraged? Maybe basics as like meditation or diet, or any key practices that you do to keep. I mean, you're clearly on your AAA game. Any practices that you do on a daily basis to maintain that energy levels, performance? I'd
say was something I just did before I came on, were key energy exercises, which actually helps with that alignment. And I will do my Aduco gym exercises 3 mornings a week. Now it only takes 20 minutes. So it's very fast, but it's very clearing of the mind and raising the energy. A walk, what we call a walk of life. And that's not just any old walk. It's really noticing that, in fact, I'm just looking out the window right now. Each snow crystal is like a little diamond shining in the sun. And that's the perfection, like the Giant's Causeway. That's the perfection of nature. And when you see, feel and hear the perfection of nature, it's a happening. It's radiating with you. I can see Arthur nodding like mad. I'm sorry I can't see everybody. Arthur just happens to be up there, but it just is. There's lots of other practices. For instance, being present for you all, totally being in the moment. Listening and aware of the desire, Dan, for you to share these steps, to give everybody a chance to be this. And that's why, thanks to Garrett, I would love to be able to work with you and your group, once or twice a week, to be able to actually go into a meditation, a relaxation that explains why, when you really relax and set down the chatter that sometimes keeps people awake, that you allow room for this energy to come up and flow out, and insights, innovation, creativity, joy, all inventions are from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are just a couple of the things, but
they help a lot. Do you think too much self-belief, confidence, or positivity can be a bad thing?
I think the very fact they've asked that question is coming from an interesting place.
I literally, no offense to whoever sent me that question, I swear on my life, hand on heart, that is the first thing I thought.
Oh, Well, it shows we're on a similar
I asked
wavelength.
somebody once I asked somebody, like, if you could be self-critical of me, what would you say my biggest weakness is as a person? And they said, you're too positive. And I was like, that's interesting.
Oh, well, and I wouldn't say that, but I'd say sometimes people, for instance, if you give an awful lot to charity, sometimes that can swell your ego. But actually, when you really realize that charity is depressing the spirit, we call it, in our family, we call it spoiled bratness. You know, you cannot spoil somebody. Of course, love is important, but if you spoil them to such a degree, and it could be a whole country, by the way, I'd say it's probably one of the mindsets. When I went into Belize, they thought they were lesser people because they had been, they'd always sent their wood, etc., and their natural resources up to England. Now, it was beautiful wood and beautifully carved, but they were sort of like a service. They had a service mentality, a secondary mentality. Now, luckily enough, Belizeans only had a couple of mindsets. Now, if I went into the middle of New York, sometimes the people can't even look up. And that's what I would say is, if you cut an onion in half and you see that lovely wee bit in the middle and you see all those thick layers, that's what can happen when you are totally covered in layers of stress. Now, some people during this pandemic are glued to the TV and the media, and they're stressing the daylights out of themselves. And it's worse than the virus. They get sick. Stress is the biggest dealer of illness. Whereas some people are actually going in and taking that opportunity to ask themselves, what is this life about? How can I find out? How can I find out more? And that's when they ask that and go out there, like us all today, then the answers come, because we're born with this spirit within us. We're born with this light and life.
And those of us that have taken it as an opportunity, I've encouraged the property entrepreneurs throughout the pandemic, all the way since last March, to make the most of it. I think it's been a fantastic, obviously there's been so many bad things that have happened. I'm not taking away from that. But I've said to the property entrepreneurs a couple of times, specifically in the first lockdown, I feel quite privileged having lived through it as an experience, like a suspended capitalism. It's been really interesting to see how people have behaved, both from a position of making the most of it, and also, you know, how poorly some people have behaved. A couple of quick ones. What age will you retire?
Never.
Like Warren Buffett, 5 years after you die. What are your values?
And I actually don't think you really die. I think our spirit goes on, and it's a continuum.
I believe you're preaching to the converted. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot more control over this world and life than we think. We also have a lot less control over this world and this life than we think.
And it's a choice. It's a choice, and that's what we're talking about today. We have the choice, but it hasn't been exposed to us properly in our educational systems. That's why a Duco is a key, an absolute key step. I just looked at one little question, and funnily enough, I just saw it because the name of the girl's Hannah, and that's the name of my eldest daughter. And I'm delighted. This is the year, by the way. Good. I just see it's her year. Yep. Lovely.
I was going to pick up on Hannah's. I'm coming over to the Zoom comments now, actually, so that's good timing. Hannah's saying about this is really hitting the spot for her, which is great, and she wants to move from a space. I'd be interested to get your take, and I'm also going to offer my take. And she's lived a very perhaps logical approach to life previously, and wants to move more to more heart than head, more like fun and flow than logic. To support her to tune into the thing we're talking about, which is energy, spirit, getting this thing together. What would your advice be to Hannah?
Take advantage of this situation right now, which you are, I can tell, and let's keep this going. You know, through you, Dan and Garrett, provide the resources. They're free, by the way, but it'll open further, because, and you alluded to this with one of your questions, you can be drawn back into the matrix and the doubt and the thinking if you're around the wrong people. That's why, you know, your group here of 100, 200 people is important to be each other's cheerleaders as well. And I will, with the help of Sharon, I see her on, will send you these resources and help everybody, because this is meant to be. This call is a calling even.
Without a doubt. And I think just one thing to sort of really anchor this in for Hannah and for everybody is what Susan and I aren't saying is that we're not head in the clouds, nutty professors, and we just think positive and great things happen. We've both got our academic, our qualifications, our experience behind us. This is all of our decisions are made fundamentally on sound decisions. All the things we talk about through October, November, December, strategy, strategic positioning, catching the wave, is making those decisions. And what you find just by osmosis or just as a byproduct is when you've done that study and you've read it and you believe it, it's that gives you the motivation and the momentum and the confidence to go about it. And then anybody can tell you that it's not going to happen, but it always will. And yeah, it is following your heart to believe things and doing things you're passionate about and engaging with your spirit to do the stuff you want to do. But it's not on a whim. It is fundamentally underwritten by your studies. You're looking over the history and then setting yourself up on that, obviously doing that in flow. So it's doing that in line with the things that are congruent with what you want to do.
I would answer that maybe in two ways. One, if I had kept my geological hat on in Belize, we wouldn't be talking today. Because I would have listened to the president of Shell, because he's a geologist too, and many more years of experience than me. So you do gather the data. I would say collect the information, but then the ultimate trust is your life force. And that will bring up and allow you to have this vision that is so clear that it's certainty itself and it's imprinted on your unconscious. And that is the co-creatorship, the partnership with life. So it's a step more. I'm thinking of a young man who went on the seminar about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, and he didn't even go to university. He actually decided, bright, well brought up, everything, but he decided to just follow this. And he now has a health company which is into, and these people, these doctors, he brought one of the doctors around here, cell rejuvenation and things like that. And he is just following that that path that he has seen laid out from the seminar on. And by the way, he went to the seminar when he was 17, skeptical, because he was so depressed. And his mum and I just said, look, what have you got to lose? What's the worst thing that can happen? It was in Monte Carlo, actually. And he sort of cynically said, well, I'll get a holiday. But he actually went, and the energies and the clarity allowed him, even him, to sit down and actually bring that being that he was born with right out. And in fact, I'll send the testimonial. I just helped him with a testimonial about a month ago. I'll send that to you. His name's Tanner.
Yeah, throw over. A couple of the videos you've sent me, they're very, very powerful. And once the world turns back to reality, we'll have a look at, see what dates are available. I think I'll probably be heading over to do one of the seminars at some point. It's one of those experiences, I think, that we can't live without. So I'll keep everybody posted if and when I end up doing that. One other question I've got here, and then we'll probably start drawing it to a close unless anyone's got any final questions, just being respectful of everyone's time. Got a great question here saying, what challenges do you or have you faced being a woman at such a high level in business? How did you overcome this? And what advice would you give to others of us that are trying to achieve it? So specifically about being a woman in big business. Has it ever been tabled? Has sex ever been tabled in your experiences? Have you found it as an advantage or disadvantage?
Maybe
I don't know about that. I think you're doing all right.
I worked with Bill Clinton in Little Rock, Arkansas, about 20 years ago, and everybody always says, "Did he hit on you?" And he, but let me just say, the inclusion stuff, whether it be rich versus poor, black versus white, pink versus purple, Catholic versus Protestant, girl versus boy, it's all a mindset. It's all a mindset. There's one step solution. And actually, if we could all come together, because that's our common denominator, that essence of life force, that spirit within us, is the unifying factor here on Earth.
Have you ever sat there in a meeting though and thought, you know, maybe it's you and 3 or 4 guys, and thought, I know more than whatever, you deserve the opportunity, or you deserve, your voice is the most significant in the room, but perhaps because you were the only woman in the room, it played its hand against you?
Sorry, I'm trying to turn off my telephone.
No worries, we will let you go in a minute. I appreciate how busy you are.
No, not at all, actually. In fact, that's a young man who's, I'm sort of mentoring him. I've never, I'll tell you what I do, and I hope we're doing this right now, especially, I love the questions back and forth from you, Dan. Speak to the life force within people. Don't speak to the things, the mindsets that are diluting them. So I might go in with 3 multi-billionaires, you know, and this is before I hit oil. But I don't see them, I don't see people as better or worse or richer or poorer or different. I see us as togetherness in the energy. And you know what happens? It's a happening. You know, when you go into a meeting like that, it actually transcends a lot of their, what I would say would be crap. And you know, and even humor comes out in a different way. I remember the closest thing I've got to sexual harassment is a big Texan, this is years ago, but a big Texan came up and hugged me, and I was asking him for 15 million or something. And he said, you look gorgeous today, in his Texas accent, big hat and all. And I squeezed him back and looked up to him and I said, you look gorgeous too. And he was totally delighted. Now, what happens is we've got into a reactive mode, and we don't need to do that. We can actually speak to each other's loving generosity, humor, spirit all the time.
Yeah. I think if there's anything that's come out of this session, that's been the biggest thing. Is this is a lot bigger than us as individuals. We're not him and her and boss and richer, poorer, like you say. Like there's a lot more to all of this, a lot more to this than we all think, and a lot less to all of this than we think. We're going to round up now. Just to finish off, if you were to give 2 or 3 top tips for everyone to take away today, to take away this afternoon, Hannah, Garfield, all those have been expressing an interest, 2 or 3 top tips that we could really take away, ponder this evening, sleep on tonight, and put into action, what would they be?
I would say, let's keep ignited. Let's keep together, keep ignited, and be here for each other. And I'm including me actually too, because once this has come up in you, to follow it is really, really important. And to be around and share with other people, and come back, ask me questions. And I'm sure Gareth would answer some questions, and find out about the Aduko gym, because it's another great resource to keep you going, keep you aligned, allow you to be accessing that birthright always. And then when the seminar is, you know, as many as possible come on that one. Now that it's getting booked out, but and that hopefully there will be another one after that. But I would say, let's prepare, let's open our minds and keep prepared, and keep this energy which we're all igniting. And I'm delighted with some of the questions, and Dan being guided by you. I think this has been wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I've enjoyed it. It
has been amazing. Like, it's been absolutely buzzing. It was high energy when we spoke previously. This has been another level. Guys, can we unmute ourselves, give Susan a huge round of applause and say thank you for her time this evening?
you, everybody.
Yay!
Thank you to you too, guys.
Oh, thank you, Susan.
Look, it's lovely to see
Brilliant.
all the faces. I wish I'd seen all your faces. I only saw your first row, but if I look too much, I forget what I'm saying.
Susan, it's been a genuine honor and pleasure to have you on the call with the Property Entrepreneurs. Guys, I hope you got as much value out of that as I did. If you were feeling a bit like you were flagging at 4 o'clock this afternoon, I'm sure you're going to be buzzing this afternoon and evening. So let's get out there. Let's get our steps in. Let's give Susan one final round of applause and thank her for her time. Thank you very much, Susan. Thank you, Sharon, for joining us.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Gareth.
And thank you, Gareth, for the introduction. Absolute game changer.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys. I hope you got as much value out of that as I did. Absolutely buzzing now. And I'll see you all in Facebook tomorrow for our session at 11 a.m. Have a good afternoon, guys. Thank you again, Susan. Thank you, Sharon. Take care. See you all soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take
Thank
care,
you,
guys.
Thank you.